This is day 1 of the November 93 7-day retreat in Springwater. In the first talk of every retreat that we've held so far, we will talk about listening, a new and fresh kind of listening, not just to a talk like this, but to the birds, the rain, the wind, and oneself. How do we listen? What is the quality of our listening in its depth as well as superficially? And we will also talk about authority right from the beginning. Maybe shed light on our tremendous urge to be or to follow authority. To be, to follow, or to create authority, to fight authority. And whether it's possible for you and me coming together here on this foggy morning to relate to each other, to communicate with each other without authority. Which means awareness of this drive for authority, or drive against authority. Whether it is possible for you and me and we among each other to interrelate on a new and fresh basis, which does not invoke the old habit patterns of authority. So, in listening right this moment, the bird calling, the pausing, the breathing, what is the quality of this listening? What is the quality of listening to the talk, the words that are spoken? What is the state of the mind and body this moment? Is there a listener, a wanter, a knower, someone who remembers what he or she wants, would like to hear, is afraid of hearing? Is it memory that is listening? The memory of words, of what something is, what it reminds me of, but I would like it to be for me. Someone there, something there that urges or blocks out, resists, or grasps at. Usually when we go to a lecture someplace, we have an idea of what the person is going to say, or at least what we expect or want the person to say. Or we may want to hear something interesting, new, thought-provoking, challenging. And all of these expectations shape the listening. Can one pause to question that? Do the expectations that are there right now, maybe they're not conscious, one is not aware of them, but we're pausing to look and wonder. Are there expectations of what she's going to say? And do the expectations, what I want to hear, what I want this talk to be, or what I'm afraid that may come up, do they, in fact, shape the listening? Maybe not just shape it, but prevent it from happening. If something is said which is pain arousing or fear arousing, which is threatening to whatever this whole body-mind is holding on to about itself and this world it lives in, if anything threatens that pattern, there may be no listening at all, or else just a very vague, non-threatening perception. It happens so often that someone will say, what you said today, I heard for the first time, and it made sense. Why didn't you say this earlier or before? Do we only hear what we're ready to hear or feel safe to listen to? And this whole thing of feeling safe, what is that? What are we protecting in listening and looking and interrelating? Protecting and trying to make safe. Can we question that? Not provide answers. Answers come very quickly out of the automaton. Drop a question, receive an answer. But we're not interested in just the automatic answers, except for the process itself. How quickly the answer to a question comes out. But wondering, what are we protecting in our listening to each other, or in our not listening to each other? Can that question sit there and shed light on what we're holding on to? Is there holding on to? Well, ask the question. We don't need the answer. Let the question operate on its own, which it does, in amazing ways. So one is here, maybe for the first time, then what is said can appear to be new. Maybe one is here for the 10th, 50th time, 100th time. Then is the mind already set to know what is going to be said, because the first talk always deals about listening and authority. And this set of knowing with the memory there in place. Is that what's going on? Because what is said and what is heard, the listening, talking, is not yesterday's or last year's, last retreats. It's something that's happening this instant, freshly, newly, for the first time. And the bird that's calling is not the bird that called 5 minutes ago. What is it? Is it possible to be free from memory and expectation in being here now? Free from the influence. The memory is there, the expectation may be noticed, but it doesn't need to dictate, to narrow. This moment of open awareness and wondering. I really don't know what I'm going to say next. It is not prepared. And we do not know the bird the next moment. What is it this moment? The breathing is a breathing that never was here before, never will be there again. The sound of someone moving, the physical sensations in the body from sitting, heart beating, blood circulating. It's never been here before and will never be here again. So even memory is a very useful function of this brain. At times it serves no function at all. In listening now and wondering what is happening and questioning what is being said, whether it's really so or not. Leaving it open, not saying yes or no, right or wrong. Can we listen that way? The word, the judgment comes up so quickly, doesn't it? Labeling something, needing to know it, what it reminds me of. Someone is coughing, someone is breathing or moving, the bird is calling, the talk is proceeding. Does it need extra words to describe it, to explain it, to know it? The word, the judgment, comes up so quickly. It seems as though there was no way of separating the perception, the listening, from the word. This is this, this is that. I like it, I don't like it. But it can be perceived. Judgment coming up, liking and disliking, which is often verbalized to oneself. And sometimes just in body language, can be perceived to be happening. Can it happen without being judged any further? So that the listening opens up to what's happening, the judgment, the like, the dislike, and their immediate physical connections. Liking something arouses energy, good feeling, wanting more. There's a wanting more that pervades the whole organism, a very palpable movement wanting more. And it's perceivable as happening. Or disliking something, the revulsion or the fear that happens, are palpable movements of this body-mind. The thought triggering feelings, emotions in the body. And the state of the body which is discomforted, arousing more thoughts, I don't want to feel this way. Or non-verbal, I don't want. Can it come into awareness? Wanting more and not wanting, recoiling, resisting. Not, what am I going to do about it? We're not asking that. Can it come into awareness? As it is, resisting and wanting more, as a movement which is ancient in this body-mind, an ancient pattern, revealing itself right now. So, in listening this moment, is there a listener? A sense of me separate from what is heard? Me and the bird? Me and the talk? Me and my emotions, my feelings, my judgments, my memory? Is it there, this palpable feeling of separation, of meanness? What is it? Not to accept it or reject it as right or wrong, but wondering about it. Because someone says that there can be a listening in which there is no sense of separation, no sense of separate listening, separate judging, rejecting or accepting. So, is it worthwhile questioning this feeling of separation, which causes so much sorrow, so much pain? So much violence, estrangement, loneliness, and all that comes of all of that. And what is said here in talks, like this morning, does not mean to say, don't feel separate or get beyond separateness. Don't listen with memory or don't judge. We don't say that. Please let me point it out from the very beginning, and we'll have to go over it many times. Because the way we hear things may not be the way things are said. We are accustomed and trained to be criticized, to be told what is right and wrong. The implication always being do the right thing and get rid of the wrong. That's how we hear things, even if they're not said this way. So in talking about judgment, about resistance, about the sense of a separate me judging and resisting what is out there, it's not meant critically as something to be gotten rid of, to be overcome, to be conquered. It's something to be understood, discovered as it happens, without judgment, and allow the understanding, the awareness to operate on its own, without immediate thoughts of changing what is being discovered. Fear or resistance is discovered. It need not be changed. It need to be understood, to be seen and felt as it moves and encapsulates and creates pain. Is that possible, to discover and observe what is happening without taking action for or against? And notice the strong impulse to take action. It is so deeply conditioned into this body-mind. Not just to simply discover, but to do something about what is being discovered. The anger or greed or fear. Can it be left alone, whatever reveals itself in the mirror of awareness? Can it be left alone? So that the awareness is not immediately shattered with judgment and the desire to change, to condemn. All of us, everywhere, not just here in this room, all of us everywhere have grown up with ideas and pictures, images about ourselves, what we are, what we shouldn't be, and what we should be. And it was not an innocent process of just gathering up images. They were also connected with praise and blame, reward and punishment. Whatever home or society or group we grew up with, some images were rewarded, some punished. Rewarded with lovingness or affection, a kind look, or punished with rejection, a disapproving gaze, withholding of love and affection. So no wonder we grew up to believe that this is what we are, because it's alive with approval and disapproval, which immediately triggers energies and emotions in the body. Approval feeling wonderful, disapproval feeling horrible. So have we indeed grown up to repair and maintain these images of ourselves? To cling to them as though this was me? And in coming to a silent retreat, listening to talks, but also sitting quietly, more aware than usual, all kinds of things about ourselves come into view. the angry thoughts, the greedy thoughts, the violent thoughts. And it's so hard, so difficult to just see it. Because there's the image of what we think we should be and don't want to be like. And it doesn't coincide with what is being seen and discovered from moment to moment. So will one cling to the image, to the idea of oneself, or find out what is actually going on in this body-mind, regardless of how we have thought we are or think that we should be, or are afraid that we may be but shouldn't be? Is it possible for this quiet observation or awareness to shed light on what is there in a human being like you and me, without immediately identifying or disidentifying? And the heaviness, the pain or pleasure that goes with identifying or disidentifying, not to let that interfere with awareness of what's actually there, without needing to do anything about it. That's the beauty of this work. It needs no interference. Discovery in awareness is sufficient. And just let the light shine on all of our impulses to do something for or against. But see that these are automatic reactions that can be questioned. Questioning meaning wondering, does it have to be this way? Not it shouldn't be this way. Just wondering in an open and benign way. Gentle with oneself and each other. Is it possible? Or is that just another image? By gentleness, I mean aware of the impulse to put oneself down or to put others down, and seeing it as a mechanical impulse conditioned into this body-mind since time immemorial. It needn't continue. But what will prevent it? This constant down on oneself or up on oneself. The roller coaster emotions that go with it. Can it all appear in vast space of looking and listening freshly for the first time to what reveals itself in a human being like you and me when silence is entered, when there's very little stimulation to distract oneself from painful thoughts or memories or reactions, when they can be come upon as they are and felt completely without needing to do anything about it. Just the quiet and open listening and looking, which is vast, is not restricted to what goes on in this body-mind. It includes birds calling and radiators ticking. The feeling of cool air, the light and dark. No borderlines. So in what has been said so far about the listening, about what it reveals or may reveal as thoughts and imagery, clinging and resisting, grasping and rejecting. In talking about it, looking and listening, where is there authority? Is there? Or is it up to each one of us to test out whether what is being said is really so in oneself and around oneself? If those delineations indeed hold. It's up to each one of us to find out about ourselves, to listen and look inwardly, superficially and deeply, and to discover about ourselves alone and in relationship. No one can do it for us, this inward looking and listening and discovering. Someone out of his or her own looking can point things out, but words are not enough to convince one, or are they? Is one easily convinced by words, by the experience of someone else? Or will one be skeptical and find out for oneself, and yet not reject what is being said and not take it over? There's such a fine line about the benefit of giving a talk or listening to a talk and the danger of it. Because words point at things, but are never what is pointed at. That is something that can only be directly discovered and experienced wordlessly before it becomes word again and one explains it or discusses it. So, does that become clearer? That in this work of looking and listening alone and together, in talks, in meetings, but also most of the time sitting, walking, working, or resting alone, in this work there is no authority unless it is created by the mind that craves authority to shelter itself in authority of someone else. That's the craving of the mind, of thought, since we were small, and maybe had the good fortune to find some protection in sheltering in our parents and the people who surrounded us. Not every young child has even that. So the craving for someone to shelter us, to tell us what to do, take us by the hand and lead us, to do things for us is immense. It's passive or actively functioning in all of us. Wanting to find truth and happiness and refuge through someone else. And then the attachment to the person, the attachment to the words, the unquestioning attachment. If that is operating, can it be discovered as it functions? Wanting to be told and at the same time not wanting to be told? Or seesawing between creating and adopting authority and rebelling against authority? All of it removed toward holding it and looking and listening inwardly to what is actually happening in a human being. So full of wants, so afraid, so needy. For what? I wonder whether it follows inevitably that if there is great neediness, a lot of wanting and fearing, that there is the danger of attachment to authority. Blind attachment. Doing what one feels told to do in return for protection and guidance. If this is so, don't we need to get to the bottom of wanting and fearing? Living with it, being intimate with it. Not in a narrow way, in an open way. It exists with the bird call and the wind and clouds. Can it be examined, felt, listened to without authority, without knowing where it will lead one, without knowing? By knowing, I mean having the answers. Well, of course I'm wanting, because of course I'm fearing because of this and this and this. But right now it's there. What is it? Fearing and wanting, what is it? Without the word, without labeling it even, just the listening spaciously Not in order to end it or be free of it. It's there. What is it? It's there in all human beings. Why? Inevitably so? Does it have to do with being identified with this body and mind, with this sense of me? It's a good question. As long as this identification runs, unquestioned identification with this body and mind as me, the only me there is, isn't wanting and fearing inevitable? The body is mortal, subject to all kinds of illnesses, aging. The mind is fickle, in contradiction with itself, in conflict with itself and its environment. So what safety and security is in this identification? It constantly spawns fear and wanting to be safe. Safe through other people, lovers, companions, friends, or teachers, spiritual teachers. But one can find out for oneself, and one is finding it out. It doesn't work that way. Friends and companions and lovers and spouses leave one or die. Are we looking for security and happiness and safety in the wrong place? Or can we question the looking for it? The wanting to get it and fearing not to get it, security and happiness? Can we question this whole identification with me? The idea of a self, an I, a me. What is it? How does it arise from moment to moment? No one can do it for us. It can be pointed out in endless books and talks. But the insight has to happen in each one of us. And it does happen. It can and does happen. When everything is questioned, nothing is taken for granted, and the awareness and listening is allowed to operate freely exposing what is there. Freely exposing the habitual responses not to see, not to look, to resist or to escape. To expose those reactions as they happen. If they're exposed at the moment they're exposed, the question arises quite naturally. Does this have to continue? Does it have to be this way? That's enough. Yes or no is too much. Exposing and questioning has its own wisdom and energy. and compassion. We will end here for today.